Hey guys, it's Amy Shaw here. Today I want to talk about shamanic consciousness. It's just something that's been on my mind the last week or so. I think the reason this is important is because a lot of people don't understand what shamanic consciousness is, and I am the one that's calling it shamanic consciousness. Some people call it journeying, or I don't know. There's a lot of different words and explanations for it, but I just want to talk about it and the distinctions between that and, say, meditation and other states of consciousness. And the reason why it is so important for shamanic individuals to master shamanic consciousness. So first of all, how it's distinct is, so I learned transcendental meditation, TM, which is a very distinct type or path of meditation. And in TM, what they do is they teach you a mantra. And so you're supposed to repeat the mantra in your head, or you can do it out loud. And the goal of that is to actually clear the mind, so that as soon as you have thoughts come up, you just go back to the mantra. And so the idea in TM is that thoughts are actually just like a form of stress. And the goal is to get to a place of like this complete emptiness, or this like utter stillness or quietness of the mind. I've been to that place many times. I practiced TM for about 2 years, every day. So I've been to that place many, many times of like that complete, I don't know what you'd call it. Bliss isn't the right word, but it's just this rich, velvety, warm, sort of nice place of relaxation, of peace, of rest, this feeling of wholeness, completeness. But it really does come from that place of emptying your mind. So even, and TM really, practicing TM really opened me up psychically even more than I already was. So a lot of times I would get not just like the mundane sort of ego thoughts, but I would get like full-on imagery that would come in. And I remember my TM teacher telling me that, oh, imagery, that's just another form of thought, and to try to like let that go. And so the goal of TM, at least as a distinct type of meditation, was always to empty the mind, empty the mind, empty the mind. Shamanic consciousness is actually the opposite, because the intention of that is to make connection in the spiritual realm. So it's less focused on like, sort of self-centering, and more focused on doing the work in the spiritual realm. So in shamanic consciousness, journeying, whatever you want to call it, you're actually trying to open up and use your active imagination. When people first learn how to do shamanic journeying, a lot of times they'll come out of a journey and they'll be excited, like, oh, I saw this, I interacted, and this happened. And then they'll have this self-doubt and feel like, oh, I just made it up in my imagination. No, it wasn't really real. I just made it up. I just imagined it. Well, the thing of it is our imaginations are sacred. They truly are sacred. They are the interface between us and the spiritual realms, and they offer us a lot of insight and wisdom. And so it's our culture that downplays it and says, oh, it's just your imagination. And I've talked about this before, even in dream time. It's in our culture where we wake up from dreams as little children and our parents tell us, oh, don't worry, it was just a dream. And so our culture just continues to reinforce this idea that just these other just types of consciousness aren't real, they're not valid. In actuality, they're more real and more valid than our material local consciousness. And being able to access that and to decipher it, to read the language of it, is a crucial part of being on a shamanic path. So shamanic consciousness is really about going into an altered state and allowing your active imagination, we'll call it, to open up and to experience and interact in the spiritual realm with, various scenes and spirits to gather information and for healing and all of that kind of stuff. Now, some people will criticize, people that stand around and drum, bum, 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 like this is, a bad thing. But in actuality, drums are one of many, many ways that shamans have used for centuries to alter their consciousness and achieve that shamanic consciousness. Other ways shamans have historically altered their consciousness is through entheogens, like ayahuasca or iboga or, San Pedro. I mean, these are the plant medicines. These are other ways that shamans have altered their consciousness to gain access to the spiritual realm. But, definitely drumming can help put somebody in that sort of shamanic state and open them up. How it's distinct from dream time is that obviously when you're dreaming, you're asleep. You have less control. For most people, it takes many, many years of actively trying to work in that dream space to gain mastery and control over that. Where in the shamanic consciousness, because you're not actually asleep, you maintain much more control of that environment. So I would say then basically what makes shamanic consciousness different from meditation is that meditation really is about centering self, quieting self, coming to peace with self, letting stuff go. Shamanic consciousness is much more about information gathering, making connections, alliances with spirits, working on behalf of self and others, for benevolent purposes, all that type of thing. Doing shamanic work, soul retrievals and extractions and all of these things, but being able to bridge the gap between, the material 3D world that we have here of our ordinary reality and, the spiritual realm, the higher dimensions, and a non-local or ordinary reality. So that's really what a shaman is somebody who bridges the gap between the two. So I just want to make that clear distinction between meditation and shamanic consciousness. And I also want to say that it's so important for anybody that's on the shamanic path to really master the shamanic consciousness. This requires a technical skill. So much of being a shaman is about the innate sort of inherent nature of the soul, the shape of the soul, the distinct sort of path that has a very distinct narrative of what a shaman is. And then there's the technical aspects. The technical aspects is what I'm talking about, being able to navigate the shamanic consciousness and how important it is to gain that technical skill, to be able to move in and out of that consciousness easily. And it comes with time and experience and continued work. For example, I, have been doing this long enough now where I'm at the point where I can access my shamanic consciousness without needing drumming. Although, when I do my work in the morning, I do put on a couple of different tracks on some headphones. I haven't mastered the ability yet to drum myself while I access full shamanic consciousness. Now, if I'm in a circle of people and I'm drumming for their benefit so that they can access shamanic consciousness, I am able to access it enough of feeling the energies in the room and holding the space for that. Sort of doing the work to tend to the group. So I can easily go in and out of shamanic consciousness and don't necessarily need drumming to do that. But like I said, in the morning when I'm doing my shamanic work, I do listen to a drumming track. It helps me to drown out, the noises of, everything that's going on outside, the cars driving by and this and that. Just keeps me focused. But I think that that's a really important part of shamanic work, is being able to master the states of consciousness and come in and out of them as you need to, because we can't stay in that consciousness all the time. Being an adulting, being in this very demanding world that requires our attention a lot is an important part of maintaining one's integrity and their impeccability and being present. And, there's nothing, I think, more discouraging than working with somebody that's disheveled or incapable of maintaining the basics of adult existence. So we have to be able to do that. We have to be able to, on cue, be able to adult when we need to adult, be responsible, show up for our appointments, set appointments, all those kind of things that have to do with being an adult and being in integrity, but also be able to 5 or 10 minutes into that appointment, come into shamanic consciousness. So being able to master those states of consciousness are just important part of the shamanic path. And so I just want to encourage you in that. If you're new to shamanic journeying, to understand that whether you're making it up or not is beside the point, because the fact of it is that you are a sacred being, and your imagination, your consciousness is a sacred thing. And so that experience that you're having, real or not real, that's totally defined by your culture. And just, if you can, there's a blue jay, I don't know if you can hear it. If you can, just let complete go of those, self-sabotaging thoughts, those doubts, those fears, and just allow yourself to lean in heavy into your imagination. Another thing I want to briefly say, if you're new to shamanic journeying, and you continue to do it, at some point you're going to have very, very, very scary experiences with spirits. You're going to see stuff and experience stuff that's horrifying. And, you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Something's wrong. I did something wrong. And I just want to alleviate your fears and let you know that that's completely normal. Don't allow that to stop you or to be fearful. If you can, lean into it as much as you possibly can tolerate to try to understand what's the message, what's happening, what's the purpose, what's the message of it, because all the spirits really are acting for our benevolent interest. They aren't really truly trying to harm us, although it might seem like that at moments. That really is about processing and going through different phases of the path, and we've all been through it. It's just necessary. So if you're new to shamanic journeying, just understand these things. If you're not new to it and you've been doing it, then start experimenting with the different states of consciousness and accessing them, because we really don't want to be passive victims of the consciousness, where it just happens to us or overtakes us. We want to be intentional and always in control of our states of consciousness. So learning how to do that and shift between the states is very, very important. All right, so that's all I really have to say today. If you have any questions, comments, as always, leave them down below on the video and all those different ways that you can get a hold of me. I would love to hear from you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys so, so much.